Oh, no, it hasn't started yet. I
What?
didn't know it's live, but
This is so
it's gonna
weird. My
start
my
shortly, it
computer is
seems.
just acting really strange right now.
Stream.
Like I don't know what kind of glitches are happening in the Matrix. But if you can hear me, then I think we might as well just start and hope for the best.
This was live for 7 minutes.
That was great. Oh, it was perfect. I think a lot of people, that was probably, a better introduction than anything else. Now people know. Now people know what to look forward to. I mean, frankly, I would have warned you, but I was afraid that would have affected the quality of the Slovenian accordion, and I just really wanted it. It was perfect, For everybody, I want to say your name right. Is this Aljosa? How do you say your name?
Yes. Aljosa, yes.
Yeah, cool. It's a decent name. So, Kakose, what's up, TC Kollega? Welcome to the show. I don't know if I'm frozen, so if you can't see my face, like move, then I'm just gonna move to your face because it's just ridiculous. I look like I'm some sort of a dream character. I don't know what's going on with the computers, man. They're breaking on me. Oh man, what's happening? Is this just because of StreamYard? What is going on? Is it being overused? I don't know. Is that better? Okay. Oh God, I'm trying. I think I'm being hacked. I literally think I think my computer's being hacked. I'm sorry. So if it goes off, then I apologize. But I think we're gonna keep trying because we're getting there. Let me make sure. Can you hear me now? Let's see. Cam twist, audio, Yeti.
Yes, I can see you and I can hear you, so it should be fun.
Holy mother of God. Yeah, I am being hacked, but it's chill, fam. All right.
Wait, who would hack you? What's going on?
All right, I'll explain. I'll explain another side of my life to you sometime. So everyone, this is Alyosha. Alyosha's a great human being. He studied philosophy. Let's try that again. He studied philosophy. Yeah, and do you want to introduce a little bit about yourself and what we're doing?
Okay, yeah. So I'm Alyosha. I just started a YouTube channel like a couple of months ago, and I just do weird philosophy videos, mainly about philosophy of language, how language works, how we use it to communicate different ideas, but there's also a lot of paradoxes and problems involving in that, and then this opens up to a bunch of skeptical problems that I'm kind of trying to solve or trying to see what other people had to say about it, and then I'm like slowly progressing through those problems and trying to find some general answers to those topics. That's mainly what I'm trying to do, and also to keep it entertaining, I guess. That's why I'm learning the accordion now.
I like your series right now. What's the name of your channel?
Bebe Flapula.
Bebe Flapula. So you guys should definitely check out the channel because it's got this really epic like orange aesthetic, which I like a lot. And you learn a lot about empiricism, but also about like dialectic, and it's a good introduction to a lot of the subjects that I think are going to become more important as philosophy kind of becomes the last major pursuit in our age, as empiricism is kind of wavering with like sensorial instruments. And also, Yosha and I started a Facebook group. As a joke, he started this advanced philosophy group because there was a philosophy memes group. So now it's advanced philosophy memes group. So go check that out, because that actually became serious. There's like 4,000, 5,000 people in it now. So that's a good addition to things. But we haven't really like caught up on like what we do, you know, like, cause like I have this weird interest in Hegel and Chardin and philosophy and dialectic and Tartaria as a framework for perspective on things, or Slavic perspective, particularly kind of bringing Slavic philosophy back, bringing, you know, Rodnavry into dialectic. And you study, I mean, you've mentioned Hegel. What are some of your Zizek? What are some of your favorite philosophers?
Okay, well, I would say, well, Wittgenstein, that is a guy that I mention a lot. He's like those eccentric Austrian guy from like 1920s. He's got was from a very wealthy family, but then he went into philosophy. He was also one of the richest people in Europe at some point, but gave all of his money away and just, you know, focused on philosophy. He also like he's kind of a weird figure. I just read the other day that he like when he was in the First World War, he was just, you know, lying there with the soldiers, and then one night he wrote in his diary how he started masturbating, but he also thought about the problems of the foundations of mathematics at the same time. So, you know, his philosophical life really like preoccupied his whole life, and he had some very interesting things to say about mathematics, language, society, philosophy in general. And yeah, this is a guy that I just keep returning to all the time.
Yeah, Wittgenstein's very important to the Waldorf school movement. They've got basically Wilhelm Reich, Wittgenstein, Erich Fromm are kind of like this like building block pillar system for escaping Hume, you know, because you have to use empiricism in your dialectic. But if you get stuck in believing just the instruments of science, instead of the experience's value to each individual, then you get lost in this kind of like Freudian thing where it's like, you know, Freud's right about himself and his mother, and some people like that. But like, if your mother isn't your, like, if you had a feminist 90s Californian mother, you know, like my mom ain't no Teddy Ruxpin, right? Like I love Teddy Ruxpin more because that's the, or whatever. Like you can have a new Jungian archetype. And I think Wittgenstein kind of talked people into thinking about what values that they had and why that they valued those things. I think that's really key. What are some of the things that you think philosophy can do for people? Why do we bother with it?
Certainly one answer I think would be that, you know, just the general answers to life. Everyone has some, and you end up giving an answer to those. Either if you do philosophy or not, you're gonna have a life philosophy. You're gonna defend some things that you think are right. You're gonna, you know, paint a sort of metaphysical picture of the world. You're gonna say that God exists or it doesn't exist, or you're gonna defend the Big Bang theory or something. So in the end, everybody has to support some theories that ultimately rely on philosophical assumptions and thinking. And it's just a shame if you just accept some of the answers, but then you don't dig into the assumptions and the assumptions that underlie those positions. And so you would understand where they're coming from and why you're accepting the ideas that you do, basically.
I think another question I should have asked first is, what is philosophy? What is philosophia? What does that mean for people?
Yeah.
Do you think it's like is it as simple as the historical etymology of the word, where it's like kind of being buddies with wisdom, or is there more of a dialectic to sophism? Like, what is sophism, and what's the difference? Like, how would a perfect world of just a philosopher kings work, or what would we do if we were all advanced philosophers?
Oh, asking the big questions, huh?
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's a tough question. But in general, I would say that philosophy, just any rational kind of thinking about the world, because Okay, no, not actually. I'm not sure actually how to define this kind of. I'm kind of struggling with just well, keeping it apart from science for one, because science is a rational way of thinking about the world, but it seems to be something different at play when we talk about philosophy, and I think that's the biggest question here: how to demarcate philosophy from science, and perhaps an answer would just would point out what this difference is, and maybe it would be about going deeper with the assumptions that underlie our scientific investigations of the world, just trying to get to the bottom of things, while scientific thinking accepts some paradigms and some assumptions, it takes them for granted so it can progress and show some what Kuhn calls, for example, it tries to basically take the paradigm from which it works and extend it to more phenomena in the world. So yeah, so philosophy in that view would have to be well, some guy that is a philosopher would be the guy who doesn't want to, who's not interested in just broadening the scope, the empirical scope of a theory, but tries to get to the bottom of it. Like, what are the presumptions or assumptions that underlie it?
I was yesterday thinking about the chicken and the egg theory, and I was like, this is not a question that should take any effort. It's the egg, right? And like it's funny because they use empiricism back and forth, but it's like, well, no matter where you go, if you're cloning an embryo, if you're going into, so this question, which came first, the chicken or the egg? If you were to use just empiricism, you'd have to keep going back and it would be confusing, but you could use some empiricism in your philosophical deduction. You have a dialectic and you see, well, everything is in some sort of embryo or cellular shape, and so except for maybe like light DNA or something, embryos and eggs are the eggs first. I don't know, it seems like philosophy can answer questions that otherwise people spend centuries worrying about and never answering with science. And science is actually so new too. It's like and it can't, and it's so plastic because it has to change as we realize our empiricism is skewed. So I agree fully that, I think as AI takes over, even the last thing that really they'll teach is philosophy, because, there'll be machines that are better at everything else, but that's going to be the thing that we still need to do.
Yeah, but also what philosophy can do, it can reject the question. It can point out that the question relies on some assumptions that basically are non-consistent. So, for example, somebody could be like, well, the chicken or the egg, this is a very categorical question for a very, very gradual process. So chicken or the egg, I mean, no, at first it was like half chickens and half eggs, and some species that are on the border, and then gradually it evolved towards the category of chicken and the chicken egg. So that's also a good, a useful thing in science. It can get rid of questions that are the scientific puzzles that kind of are there, and nobody can solve them, and philosophy can just make an end to them. Yeah, that's not a valid question to ask. Let's move on.
That sounds about right. Well, so how about a little bit more background on you? So where are you from? You're not from Pakistan, clearly.
Yeah. Wait, can I present? I'm at my grandma's house, bro, currently, because I have my musical instruments here, so I can just make noise.
But where is your grandma's house? Not Pakistan, not Texas, not London. Where are you at?
Yeah.
Tell us about your world.
Texas, not London, not New York, also not Moscow. So it's in Slovenia, little village in we call it Štajerska. It's like a special part of Slovenia where people.
I saw
it's on the outskirts. So
your curtains, your grandmother's lace curtains were just so epic. I was like, oh, this is we're in the right place right now. So what's life like growing up in Slovenia? You know, I've been there a few times. I loved it. Like, what do you like? You know, like it's a great place. Like, yeah, I went in 2001 and 2003. I remember the first time I went there, I had a pizza that I got really sick on, and it was like really bad for like 2 days. But other than that, the girls were cute, and there was like rap and like hip hop and like techno, and it was all like progressive. Whereas in like other parts of like former Yugoslavia, was way it's very different. It's very different. It's more. It's got like that. It's northern, yeah. But what part are you in, and what is it like there, and like what was it like growing up? What did you grow up through?
Okay. Well, I'm like on the outskirts of Slovenia, so more to the Hungary and Croatian border. It's I really have nothing to compare it to, because that's where I lived. I just say, I mean, looking back, seems like we were a bit behind all the technological advances or something, societal advances. There's been a lot of traditional values in my youth, I think, that were prevalent amongst my mates and stuff. You know, when we were little, everybody was, you know, there's a lot of those family working outside on the field or collecting grapes and just drinking and playing accordion until you just vomit all over your instruments and stuff. So yeah, I guess the old traditional parts are still very much alive. They still have a huge influence on people here. You know, people are also, in regards to those societal changes, there also tends to be a kind of, you know, they don't really welcome them a lot. There's also horrible like backlash to social, like for example, in 2000, I think in 2011, we tried to, there was this referendum for like gay marriage, and in the public discussions, there were like things, yeah, so what, two men are gonna have children? Are you gonna like two men are gonna have a male child? Are they gonna like rape him or what? What the fuck? Like, how can we allow this? Like, really, just shocking kind of arguments were like out there in the public and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. People are just, it's not really the most progressive place. Yeah. I mean, as you can
You'd be
see,
surprised. We have the same thing going on in the United States. Like, it's not. It's, you know, they got the same kind of thing. Well, hey, I gotta have some Jesus somewhere in here. Hold on. Where's that at? Oh. Bro, don't worry. We're all in this together. But like, I had to dig it out, but it's around. Like, so, I mean, all right. So you're in. Oh yeah, bro. And then nomini patri filiet spiritus sancti. You know what I mean? Come on, like.
Oh.
But like the priests, they have more money than anybody else here. They have like Rolexes and stuff. So there's like not the normal priests, but the bishops and things. Like bishops are doing okay. But I don't know.
Oh, right.
If you had to define a difference between theosophy, or whatever, philosophy, and ideology. Right. So we're talking about like the religious pursuit, the, you know, the philosophical pursuit, whatever that is, and the ideological pursuit, which is like, I would almost consider closer to political, but you can go any direction. How would you differentiate philosophy, or maybe what distinctions would you make between those three?
Well, the easier one would be between philosophy and ideology. Obviously, philosophy just doesn't take any. Let's say there's a very healthy amount of skepticism in philosophical work. Like, you won't go around doing some radical societal changes because you will be very aware of how fragile and non-certain the things that you have found out supposedly are ultimately, and you will kind of try to be very well, skeptical towards your own what you do, basically what you're trying to change, and you're also you will also try to keep some sort of moral flexibility. For example, you will be open to arguments changing the way you live. And for example, there's this great paper by, I don't know what's the author, but he's talking about moral catastrophes. So about a stage of, well, just a state in society that is fundamentally morally catastrophic, but from the viewpoint from our current era, it's kind of hard for us to see because we are blinded by the ideology of our present society. And for example, just like Aristotle had a great difficulty to see that ultimately the slaves are not born as inferior to us. They are, and women, and right. And he kind of failed to see this, although he was very keen on his ethical system and was trying to get to some ultimate universal moral truth. And the same goes with thinkers of the past that, well, the topic of veganism hasn't been around for, at least in the public debates or in academia, for at least until 50 years ago. And although, I mean, you can have your opinion on it, but it is certainly a thing worth talking about, the suffering of millions of sentient beings. So in that regards, it's philosophy tries to upkeep both philosophy tries to keep both a healthy skepticism towards itself and some flexibility, while ideology kind of fails to do that because it gets so caught up in the realization project of its ideals that it has no time to reconsider its own ideas. So that would be between philosophy and ideology. Although on the other side, between theology, philosophy, and ideology, I think that I would rather split theology into the kind that goes into the way of public religion. That's kind of an ideology, a kind of dealing with that of the masses. On the other side, you can have a philosophical theology that's questioning itself. I mean, we all start from some philosophical assumptions, and if somebody decides that he's going to start from the assumption of the Holy Trinity or something, I mean, that's not something that I would accept, but I can. I mean, it's not unphilosophical, let's say.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think that there's a bit of philosophy in all three, but they take them to different levels. Ideology is a lot closer to theology. That's a pretty close fact, which is sad about ideology, because then it makes it kind of like there's a quality to ideology, which is an opiate of the masses, but it doesn't always have to be. Neither does religion, it seems. But I would say the biggest scare in all three is when it becomes about and this is something I've noticed is separating the advanced philosophy memes APM group from the original group is this idea of edgelord status. There's something political correctness. Religion is a political correct philosophy or ideology in its own way. At the time, you know, they believe that what's politically correct is this, and so they go with that, and they say you can't do this and this and this and this because these are breakable rules. But ideology does the same thing. They say that, you know, you're not the new Soviet man, you're not a good American, you're not politically correct. It's it goes back and forth like that. So I think that religion, you know, and ideology at the same are kind of separate from spirituality or philosophy. Do you think that plays true in some of the older philosophers that were stuck in the church in the 1500s? I mean, there's some of those guys. Do you hate Thomas Aquinas? Do you hate Saint Cyril? What do you think of some of the, you know, Slovenians from the 1500s?
Yeah, I mean, I try to understand that if you have like 100 guys around you that are just top intellectual activity, and they all accept the assumptions of the church. I mean, I accept the assumptions to some degree of the intellectuals of my time. So yeah, I try not to be too harsh about it, because I know that I'm accepting a ton of bullshit and I just haven't figured it out yet. And I will try my best, but there's only so much years I'm gonna have until I'm just gonna, get stuck in my ideas as a kind of protective system against the, truth that I'm gonna die one day and I'm gonna disappear and nothing's gonna matter. At that point, I'm just gonna defend my ideas as a kind of defense mechanism.
Do you ever have one of those days where you just imagine Schopenhauer dying? Schopenhauer, just you imagine him dying and he's just like, he's just arguing, that's what he's like, I knew it.
I haven't done that yet, but yeah, that sounds like something everybody should do now that you've said it.
I mean, I hear you though. I mean, it's like hard not to take contention with religion that, because there's so many contradictions in society and in religion, but philosophy and political science seem to be doing the same thing. We have now, like you just said, maybe we shouldn't be so forgiving, but we should be more self-critical of our going with things. Not to say that we should abandon the things that we are taking for granted, but that we should probably figure out why we're investing in that horse more. I think, and that's why philosophy is so valuable right now. Do you have thoughts on memetics too? Like, what do you think about memes? Like, are memes more valuable than just cartoons?
Well, I started with memes in 2016 with a Facebook page called Trolley Problem Memes, and basically we used that page back then to we just used the format of the trolley problem to get different philosophical ideas across the wider audience. And
can you explain to the few people who haven't heard of the trolley, the problem?
Oh right. Okay, so basically you have a out of control trolley barreling down the tracks, and there's 5 guys on the track. Either they are workers who are just not looking, and you can't war them because they have protective protective headset, or either they are just 5 guys being tied to the tracks. Doesn't really matter. And what you can do is you can pull a lever to switch the trolley going to another track, but on that track there's 1 person. So you basically have to choose: are you gonna pull the lever and effectively kill 1 guy in order to save 5 people? And yeah, there's the trolley problem, very popular thought experiment. It gets used all the time in philosophy.
And there's different versions of the trolley problem. There's like, do you save the baby, or do you save the scientist, or
or do you run over baby Hitler, or do you run over, I don't know, baby Stalin, or whatever, or real life Hitler, or 5 Hitlers.
I still say the trick is to like kill everyone at once by hitting 4 people and shooting the other one with a gun. If you can get them all at once, that's the most efficient Stalinism, and that's ideology.
Yeah, you can also like pull it halfway so the trolley derails and then kind of stays on both tracks, and it multi-track drifts and kills both lanes. So you can also do that. That has been a popular meme for some time.
This should really be a video game. We need to make that trolley video game. I'm pretty sure.
There is a video game like that actually. There's been, I think, since 2016, there's been 2 trolley problem memes game, and one was only about going with the mechanics of multi-track drifting, and there was one that was kind of more philosophical. Would you top lane, bottom lane, stuff like that? But yeah, since there's so many variations, you can use it to basically describe any sort of either moral dilemma, either abstract dilemma. You could put any philosophy ever into a trolley problem meme. You can make a prisoner's dilemma trolley problem meme, or a, I don't know, I mean, anything, a natural state trolley problem meme, or a Kantian trolley problem meme, or a presidential trolley problem meme, a COVID-19 trolley problem meme. I mean, and those just it's a very
your values. It's how every meme is about your values, because at the end of the day, if you had to save one and the other had to die, where are your values? And it's a tragedy hypothetically, but it's an essentiality to understand. Like, let's say we're going to make artificial intelligence robots to save Will Smith's daughter. You know what I mean? Like, that's the movie. You have Isaac Asimov's rules. So the robot has to decide, the young person has more years, so I'm going to save them, or this old person might only have 10 more years, but they're in the process of developing the cure for AIDS, etc. And there's that very Bogakov master in the margarita quality, where you have to be the devil in a sense because you're the judge and you're not supposed to judge. But it's a hard thing to avoid, because we need to look at the end of the day, where are our values? Like, what would we kill and let live, if we had to? And it seems like this. How do you feel like this is going to affect the future of artificial intelligence? And do you think that that's a factor in terms of the way it's philosophy? Are artificial intelligence is going to be like police or judges and saving people using the trolley problem?
Mm-hmm. Well, much of that is currently a matter of discussion. Actually, in Ljubljana, there's going to be, I just heard, there's going to be the first UNESCO Center for an artificial intelligence, and they're going to have a department that's going to take up some philosophers who's going to be like the guys in charge of ethical questions. And yeah, I mean, philosophy, that's a lot of in academia, there's, I mean, just a ton of papers currently being printed out on the ethics of artificial intelligence. Everyone that has just a minute of time has something to say about that and just contributes to it. So yeah, I mean, even my schoolmates have been doing their bachelor thesis on artificial intelligence. Either like one made it on the autonomous, I don't know how to pronounce that, the self-driving vehicles, the ethics of it. And there's been one about the general ethics of artificial intelligence. And yeah, this has been this is one of the biggest topics in the upcoming decade, probably, in philosophy in general, probably. I mean, yeah, so I never dealt with it particularly. I have some general ethical theories that I ascribe to, but like in regards to artificial intelligence, I think that whenever it will be better than human, it's going to be used. I think so. If it's going to be less car crashes with artificial intelligence driving the car, artificial intelligence are going to drive the cars. If the radiologists are going to make more mistakes than a software telling whether there's cancerous anomalies going on in a scan, I mean, then artificial intelligence is going to be in charge of telling who is sick and who's not sick. So yeah, I think that we just have to. I mean, there's this danger that it works so well that it could take over everything. But well, should it take over everything? That's a question that I haven't dealt with particularly.
I think about it a lot. I feel like that's like the only thing that's going to happen is that every job that can be done twice will be automated. And this is the actual the Marxist future is sustainability of the growth that was captured. So you capture it. Once it rises, you capture it, and it just keeps going. Only in selective things you want to keep running, because there really has to be a reduction of labor as well as a rise of, a lack of entropy. There has to be a lack of entropy. And this is the only way we have selective economies that we continue to run. But with that, that's why I think philosophy, if you look at self-driving cars now in America, and I think around the world, the car company will pay the insurance. So if you don't have to pay insurance, it's a lot cheaper to drive your car. So if they're paying the insurance for the AI car, it will then become more and more expensive to not drive an AI car. And it makes sense because the AI cars can all integrate into a hive structure, and the hive mind can then make sure the cars can drive 120 miles an hour because there's no outside interactions. They should all be able to do whatever they want. So there's high efficiency to it. But then there's also what jobs are left. And 100 years ago, I think they, the Indians in India were upset that they were bringing a crane in so they could bring a train, so they could bring salt crystal bags to the boats, and it could bring supplies. And now everything that took a month can be done, or a week at least, can be done from 100 or 200 men, can be done in about 12 hours. Overnight, they can get all these crates, they can lift them from on trains, and they can go. And so now everyone has access to all of the resources. But, 100 years ago, people were complaining that they had, that they wanted to keep walking 20 miles with salt bricks on their backs, 100 pounds or 200 pounds on their backs for 10, 20 miles, So I see that also today. There's a lot of people that say they want to keep the dignity of working in a coal mine, but there's the capacity of a drill to be safer and to keep that person's life safer means that we probably shouldn't waste that life on them. I'm going to turn my light on too. That's a genius idea. Yeah. Dude, what are we thinking? All right. Look at you. You look great in the light. So, but
that's why I put it on.
But AI might literally be useful for the last possible thing, because then everyone who's alive would have to, everything they did ever would have to be done the first time. It'd have to be the first time it ever was done, right? I mean, because the second time it'd be automated. So would that not be, what consequences do you see for that, good and bad?
Mm-hmm. I mean, not even things that are already being done. I mean, artificial intelligence is also some of it. I mean, it depends on how they construct it, but there's some creative elements to it as well. So I mean, we can like, if there's gonna be an inventor, right? Then I mean, then there's not gonna be much things left to invent, for example, right? I mean, there's like all kinds of creative works are being taken over by artificial intelligence. I mean, it's very for now it's quite primitive what we get back, or okay, not really primitive, but not really that impressive, but it's gonna get better in the future. And once artificial intelligence can take over creative works, I mean, then it's hard to imagine what else is left for a human to do. I mean, even like repairing a anomaly in a software system. I mean, we could have an artificial intelligence to fix that. So nobody would even have to keep track of what's going inside of those systems. So yeah, I mean, ultimately there's nothing to do for us here. I mean, it's much like in Westworld, right? If you watched it, the show with Anthony Hopkins, they're like, yeah, I mean, humans, we did our time. Now it's the time for the next more pure species to take over. And yeah, I don't know, that doesn't sound right, but yeah, I mean, I think that we're approaching a state where maybe universal basic income. I don't know. I haven't thought about it much in particular, but that sounds like a solution. And maybe we will just end up being like in that cartoon Valley of that robot, that all humans are just on a bed, fucking overweight and consuming media all day and eating, and that's all they have to do because everything is automated. And yeah, I don't know, that doesn't sound like a good option, right?
There's a movie called Colossus: The Forbidden Project, which you should check out, and it's about 1960s Cold War era. And so the American machine is built, and they said, we don't need any more nukes. We got this thing we didn't tell you about, but we're telling you today because it doesn't matter. We can't even touch it. There's lasers guarding it. It's in Colorado Mountain. It's an artificial intelligent machine. And this is the 60s. So it's a computer that can think, and it can look for other, and it connects to phones and wires, and it finds bombs everywhere. And wouldn't you know it, it finds another system. There's another computer. It's like it turns out the Soviet Union was working on the same thing. They couldn't afford all the bombs. They wanted to have a peacekeeping machine too. And the AI is like, hi, I'm the AI that is to defend Earth. Who are you? And then the Soviet Union's like, that's what I am. Wait, the humans made you to defend? Yeah, they made you to, what the heck are the humans all about? Well, I don't know, but we should work together, obviously. And then they basically take over the Earth, and then they're like, from now on, war will be outlawed, vegetables only. Like, you will now brush your teeth. Like it's pretty much poverty will not be acceptable. Like, it's illegal to be poor. Like, the whole thing is like, because we create the system based on our ideals to achieve our ideals. And it's like this evil genie. It's not necessarily evil, but it's like, it's not necessarily good. It's both. It's like, we've asked it to do something, and it's a reflection of what we've asked it to do. And we shouldn't necessarily get what we want. We get what we need. So AI should also be maybe developed around, I think this other word you use, primitive. I always think of primal and prime root and prime radical. And I think that we are at a primal point where we need to start picking what the prime intention is. Are we going to have, and so if you think about a calculator, I think I did this one already, but I've been thinking about it a lot. A calculator is a computer, like they're built of calculators. A calculator is fundamental sin, like the cardinal sin, the worst thing a calculator could ever do is get an answer wrong. Anytime it gets an answer wrong, you'd throw it away. It would be like death to be a wrong calculator. Like that's all it could ever do is it's base 10, it's supposed to get 4 out of 2 and 2. If it's ever wrong, and it has to crunch numbers forever. So we've built AI on this idea that wrong is a mortal sin, and we probably need to start expending more energy putting AI into what humans do, which is in philosophy. You don't have necessarily the winner decided by a crowd. You have the sophists picking out important points and adapting themselves to the points as time goes on. So AI could be learning from mistakes. That's really the most important thing it could do. But it's so worried about making a mistake because we have given it this religious, didactic, calculatory system as its fundamental base. So it's scared to ever be wrong, And I think that that's kind of dangerous. Like if we end up in a system where AI controls the world or something because it wants to, and it starts raising, let's say it's good at other jobs, it could be good at raising children. It might be better at raising children than a lot of people. Then you have an entire new generation, but it doesn't necessarily need to teach them English. It's use Google. So it's created a new language. We could very quickly transhumanize just by being raised differently, So I have to wonder, like, again, when we say like the differences between philosophers when they discuss things versus when normal people argue or things like that. Like where can philosophy be the answer? Like, why is it that we're not ever arguing even when we have differences of opinions? Like what's the deal with that? And what's so valuable about the wisdom itself in between that discussion? Like, what are we doing for knowledge?
Yeah, that's I would say that what with philosophy I kind of learned with time that you are just arguing from a certain, you live in a certain society and you adopt a certain zeitgeist, some ideas of your time. And well, as you study philosophers of the past, you see how they were influenced by their society and the time, and then slowly get to realize, yeah, well, maybe it's the same for me. Like maybe I'm heavily influenced by the people and society and ideas around me, and I'm just a product of that. So what I can try to do is just root out those ideas that just got in without any kind of proper justifications. But well, you can never know that you've done the job completely. In fact, you have very heavy reason to think that you don't, that you're not nearly complete. I mean, even if you look at the greatest philosophers in history, like Immanuel Kant, like, okay, he did a beautiful transcendental project, and this is the ontological ethics, and everything just to the point. Like, he revolutionized philosophy with combining two of the polar opposites of the 17th century philosophy, or 18th century. Okay, but on the other hand, like, Kant was a very heavy racist, and he also made a hierarchy of races, and he was like, yeah, whites, we are the superior, reds, they can be domesticated. I mean, blacks, they can be domesticated, but reds, they are more like wild animals. I wouldn't let them into the house. They are more for keeping on the outside and stuff like that. And he actually, like, he had anthropology. He taught that lectures to students, and he actually, like, he went from his, he in one room, he just talked about the transcendental ideas and the categories of our mind. And then he went into the other classroom, and he was like, okay, today we're going to learn about why blacks are better at domesticating than reds. I mean, and when you see those, how limited people are with their, zeitgeist, then you kind of get very skeptical towards your own ideas. And when you start talking with people that you disagree with, I mean, you at least consider, I mean, their viewpoint, and you also kind of get better at viewing things from other viewpoints, because like, if you don't have like some philosophical backgrounds, it's very tempting to see everything from your own viewpoint. So when somebody confronts you with some different ideas, you immediately view them from your own lens, of your own worldview. But with philosophy, you kind of have some flexibility, and learn to, leave your building of your temple of philosophical truths. You live it, and you go into some other house, and you don't mind what's in your own house. You just take a look at what the other person has constructed, and you look whether there's some advantages in that system that you have and certainly don't have. So that's why I think that there's a lot of less arguing between philosophers. They ultimately accept that it's all just systems, and there's no right system. There's just better systems and worse ones for whatever purpose you use. And it depends. Like, usually, I mean, is it trying to derive its truth, or trying to maximize happiness, or trying to, defend some moral truths? I mean, it depends. But yeah, you start viewing at systems of thoughts more as a landscape. There's some better ones, some less preferable ones, some more preferable ones, and it's not just you, the right, and everything else, right? That would be the main difference, I would say.
So how are you doing on time? Can we ask the audience a couple questions? See if they have any thoughts.
Yeah, sure.
So anybody in the YouTube section, you guys are on the comments. If you have any questions, pop them in through. I'm gonna really quickly look through the comments to see who would put their baby on the trolley track. I answered Time Magazine. Other questions here. Existence is an egg. Got through that. The law of man, not the jungle, says Lee. George Bush said it was the law of man, not the jungle. You mean, okay, so do you think that there's a difference between the law of man and the law of the jungle? And what is that difference? And is it good or bad or better or worse?
Wait, between what?
The law of man and the law of the jungle.
Yeah. Oh, the law. Oh, right. Okay. Um, I mean, we try our best not to just collapse in chaos as a society, right? It makes no one. It helps no one if you just have to, well, sleep with a gun under your pillow, right? So we try our best to make a society that would uphold the laws of man. But, well, I mean, we can. I mean, that would be. It's like those classic dichotomy between chaos and order, I guess. And we try our best, just as in our personal lives and in society, we try our best to uphold order because, well, because we kind of try not to. I mean, chaos doesn't really lead to any optical conclusion, really. Optimal conclusion, really. And
does it not? You're an anti-chaotic. Is that what you are? Yeah.
I mean, personally, not sure. Definitely, that's what society tries to do to keep some order in, because that's things have to be ordered in
But
order to
doesn't
function.
natural law has lions and tigers and bears? They seem to have a certain amount of order. Is it just humans that are messed up? Like what? Why can't we keep? Is it not that we miss out on natural law by being human? Because I mean, granted, animals do like dolphins. Dolphins are perverts and rapists. I think we all know that dolphins are pretty hardcore. But I mean, do you know? Because you wouldn't want to. Dolphins running gangs. Dolphins murder for fun. Dolphins are not just sweet, kind, playing with. You bring a ball to the park. Park. Don't ever bring a ball to Sea Park. They, and careful what you're wearing around dolphins. They're pretty hardcore.
Me? Fuck. Okay, I didn't know anything.
Dolphins are hardcore. It's true, and maybe just mammals in general. I don't know, but the natural law thing. It seems like in a lot of nature, you've got a bird on the back of a bull, and he's helping keep the flies and bugs away from his butt. Most of natural law seems to have a certain amount of balance to it. The gorilla's a vegetarian, so what's up with this?
Yeah, but it seems like, well, the natural law was constructed with, well, a natural selection that selected just for people surviving until they were ready to make ancestors, right? To make children, make babies. So I mean, that's where natural law guides us to, so that most people would have some offsprings. That's basically what it tries to do. But society tries not to. I mean, yeah, that works for tigers. It worked for humans. It works for apes, but they don't really live a very, at least in general, they don't live a very pleasant life. I mean, they are constantly in a well, threatened with death, and all of that can be very rewarding psychologically to be just in such a cycle of survival every day. That can be, I mean, we are made in that environment, in that kind of cycle, and a lot of depression obviously is coming from the fact that we're not in this cycle where we would have constantly to look out for food, look over our back, form a tight community, which would keep us on our toes. But well, in society we kind of try, but this has some disadvantages, right? A lot of people get injured, they die, they get sick, they are heavily malnutritioned in some natural setting. There's a lot of violence. There's a lot, not only physical, also psychological. There's hierarchies that reinforce that kind of psychological suffering, and all of that works for tigers and apes and humans. Ultimately, it works for them to have offsprings. It doesn't work in the sense that it would make the most people happy and make them live a fulfilled life. A lot of them would just die before they would get the chance to have a ripe age or something. So that's kind of why well, that's the point. What society, the law of humanity tries to uphold.
Do you think of humanity? Do you think of humanity as being particularly different than the other species on the Earth, or I mean, how different are we, and why are we that different? Or special?
Well, one thing would be that we are able to combine to socialize in large groups. We have we can be like hundreds of people can get together and carry out all kinds of monstrosities. I mean, wars. You don't see that in animals, right? But humans, we are capable of just we are capable of basically gathering 1,000 scientists on one laboratory and get them to figure out how to destroy ourselves, basically. I mean, to destroy the planet, solar system. I mean, animals can't do that. So we are in a there's a bit more urgency to our project of upholding the society, because once that collapses, or and like dangerous groups of people form, those groups can basically destroy everything. They have the power to do so. That's fundamentally, I think, what differentiates us from animals. I mean, yeah, humans can get together. We can form religions, ideologies. We can do all kinds of stuff, and we can have unlimited resources on people.
Well, it's been about an hour. I'm really proud of this group getting together, and I'm grateful you came to do this. Thank you so much. I want to ask kind of a final conclusionary kind of open-ended thing, which is just we see a lot of the philosophers over time associating themselves with less chaos and more chaos, this order principle that comes out of chaos, but that they're connected together. I think almost every philosopher that I like, I mean, Schopenhauer is all right, but for the most part, the kind of philosopher I like, a lot of them have been Jesuits or have been spiritual in some way or another, like Buber, I and Thou, Unanimity -1. Teresa de Avila even is like Sacred Cathedrals of the Mind. There's amazing work done with the Kabbalah and with even Lao Tzu. So I guess my question is, considering that, and even Newton, like looking at science and DNA now, which is, you have the idea originally for the last 100 years that life has been coming from a very proto-simplistic cellular structure, but now we know that DNA is hyper complicated and that it precedes the actual evolution, quote unquote, on Earth, right? So DNA comes first. What does that say, in a sense, if DNA is so intelligent and has sequences to predict for errors and everything else? Does that say anything about a omega point, an earlier omega point than the alpha point for us? And I'm saying that as openly as possible, because it doesn't mean that you have to say God. But do you think that there's some kind of truth to this, that maybe we come from already intelligent DNA before we even evolved?
Yeah, I was. Well, I can say that I've always leaned towards the idea of keeping our theories as or reduced from entities as possible. So I was kind of always leaning towards theories that found some nominalist or minimalist explanation for things happening or being in the world. So, for example, in this, those kind of arguments about the complexity of the world, like everything in the world has to be exactly the way. I mean, there's so many variations that could have gone wrong, and the Earth will never be. And it's just so many variables that the possibility of just randomizing matter and making it resemble just the way it has to in order for humans to be created. I mean, even astronomically little is an underestimation. But yeah, there's this anthropological principle, right? We switch the question, we turn it on its head. We say, yeah, the right question is the right way to look at it is not the world is as it is, so we could exist. We exist because the world is as it is, and that kind of way of thinking. Then I've always find it very fairly intuitive when resolving such questions of complexity. For example, in DNA, right? It is a very complex structure. I mean, there's also been discussions in biology about the complexity of the eye, which is just crazy. I mean, and it led to a whole rise in the intelligent design argument in the 80s or 70s, when people discovered the complexity of the eye, and the watchmaker analogy, basically, or Palit's watch, right? The argument that a complex mechanism is proof for the existence of a intelligent designer, that basically came into, well, the debate in the philosophy surrounding biology for some time. But yeah, like we can ask, like, is it so complex so that we could see, or can we just see and we have survived because it is so complex? And again, is our DNA so complex, and foolproof has it all of those complex mechanisms that act as a sort of fail-safe so that humans would live? Or do we simply live because we lived in a very harsh environment and we needed those fail-safe elements in our DNA in order to, well, not die, at least not all of them. I mean, certainly a lot of people have died from the harsh environments in the history. I mean, okay, everybody died, but like a lot of them died prematurely in history because of the very harsh conditions. So there was a very, very harsh and natural selection that guided our DNA to be the way it is, complex and with a couple of fail-safes. So yeah, that's how I like to view this question, with sort of this anthropological principle. Just well, not asking why things are complex so that we could exist, but simply accepting this as a sine qua non, the condition that had to be met for us to be, and we are. So obviously the condition has been met, and yeah, why has it been met? Well, that's a very well, that's a question I don't really know how I would begin to answer.
Well, that's awesome. That's a very honest answer. I'll take that. I thank you very much for making the time. I hope people check out your Bebe Falupa, and also the trolley problems and advanced philosophy memes. Come on through, because it's pretty rad, man. Like, it's pretty sweet. And everybody also on all sides, go to the Xirtus Chartery Discord, because it's way deeper and darker and mischievous, and we have a lot of interesting stuff going on there. So I hope you have fun. Thanks a lot.
Nice.